Okay, now we have an opportunity to open discussion. Craig Davies has been working on metrics. Rima has been working on the roadmap for sustainable insurance. Katerina has been working on infrastructure. If we have to come up, each of you has to come up with one recommendation for the for the Standing Committee on Finance. You've had 2 days to think about it, and 1 more minute while I'm talking. If you have one recommendation for the Standing Committee on Finance, what you wish you could see the world accept as your idea to move us forward, I'll start with Craig and give you a chance to speak, and then we'll go to Rima and Katerina. We need to hear one idea each of how you want the Standing Committee on Finance to adopt in the coming year. Craig. I think we need a microphone.
Thank you, Darius. Okay, so as you saw, I haven't had much time to think about this. So, but let me just try to answer the question anyway. I think one thing that I've taken from the discussions yesterday and today is the need for the importance of governance for incentivizing better climate resilience outcomes across the board in all kinds of countries, whether they're developing countries, emerging economies, or so-called developed countries. I think this is something that has become really clear, that we have the Paris Agreement, which is a fantastic achievement, fantastic global achievement. That creates a whole new context for international cooperation and national and local action on climate change and climate resilience. I think, though, we're seeing that from the discussions that there's an awful lot of detailed, nitty-gritty technical work that needs to be done in terms of developing metrics for measuring progress and measuring risk, coming up with standards that work and can be applied, finding ways of mobilizing the private sector to get more involved. And I think the discussions are highlighting to me the importance of the governance frameworks. And that can mean a number of different things. I think one aspect of the importance of those governance frameworks is strategic planning. So we've heard a lot about strategic planning yesterday and today, how strategic planning can be very important for helping countries to articulate their national climate resilience priorities in a way that can be used to mobilize finance, in a way that can serve as investment plans. So I think one aspect of the importance of governance is that strategic planning, having the linkages between national climate resilience priorities, setting those out in a way that can be used to plan and prioritize investments, and setting them out in a way that can then be used to mobilize finance. I think there's also another aspect to the governance angle, which is what kinds of governance frameworks and structures and approaches can be used to mobilize private action on climate resilience. And we've heard some really interesting ideas yesterday and today. For example, governance frameworks that incentivize risk disclosure. And we heard this morning that risk disclosure, creating the mechanisms and the incentives for businesses, for municipalities, for investors to disclose their climate risks can be very powerful in really incentivizing those private actors to take action on climate resilience. So I think that's the thing I would take away from the discussion so far, is if we want to see a transformation in the way that the financial system operates, I think we need to think about how the financial system is governed, both at the international and national levels. So that's my kind of top recommendation.
Thank you very much, Greg. Governance, transparency, for disclosure, metrics. Rima, you must have something to add to this set of recommendations.
Bon, Greg ne m'a pas rendu la tâche facile. Je crois que je suis assez d'accord sur les aspects gouvernance et disclosure. Sur l'aspect gouvernance, aujourd'hui, ce qu'on pourrait dire, c'est que sur la vision stratégique, comment on pourrait la mettre en place, On pourrait la mettre en place en se posant la question, c'est quoi le monde financier et qu'on s'imagine dans 30 ans ou dans 40 ans, c'est quoi le monde financier dans lequel on veut que le secteur se dirige vers. C'est-à-dire aujourd'hui, en tant qu'autorité de régulation, on a le secteur assurantiel. Comment on pourrait aider à transformer le système financier? C'est en s'imaginant c'est quoi le monde de l'assurance qu'on veut dans 20 ans ou 30 ans, et c'est comme ça qu'on pourrait décliner une stratégie à mettre en place, soit en mettant des mesures incitatives, ce qui est déjà le cas dans le secteur des assurances marocaines, soit en incitant sur les aspects disclosure. Et là, je rejoins complètement Greg, parce que l'autorité marocaine a soutenu les recommandations du FSB TCDF, donc sur les 4 aspects de disclosure, à savoir gouvernance, stratégie, risk management et métrique. Et également cherche un moyen pour le mettre en place avec le secteur financier. D'autres pays comme la Colombie ou comme le Chili mettent en place obligatoire que dans une opération de due diligence, la compagnie d'assurance s'informe sur les risques climatiques avant de conduire l'opération d'acquisition ou de fusion. Donc, pour conclure, c'est plutôt avoir une vision plus claire sur le monde financier de demain. Et comme ça, on redescend la stratégie sur le terrain.
I think I'm going to change hats now because I'm also in the steering board of the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. And this CCFLA it's an alliance of about 40 members, and it was initiated by the Secretary General's Office for COP21 to stress the participation of cities in the climate finance process. And as I've been working with cities mostly with our forerunner, the TIB grading, where we presented cities projects to investors or infrastructure projects to investors, I think there is a very big demand for capacity building and technical assistance on the city level, but also on the national level. But I would say there's also a very big confusion on all the different templates of agencies. So I would recommend an alignment on templates, an alignment on access to climate finance, or an easy access to climate finance. This is a very general statement, but I think it could make a very big difference in allocating funds.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are now very close to completing this plenary, but before we conclude, I'd like to ask if there's even 1 or 2 questions in the audience. Gentleman in the far back, perhaps someone can hand him a microphone.
Yes. Thank you. I have one question to Mr. Craig, and I'd like to make some comments on the very inspiring and stimulating presentation of the matrix. In my point of view, I think that's a good starting point, and I'm very happy to hear that's a work in progress. And from developing country point of view, reducing, for instance, sorry for the wording, probably, reducing the resilience to physical and monetary value is missing a big dimension of adaptation and resilience, which is related to vulnerability, which is related to societal development, which is about resilience of livelihood, impact on most vulnerable communities, the benefit for health, and so on and so forth. And in my point of view, it will be also interesting by mind mapping your matrix to also include those components, because those aspects actually value the adaptation intervention. And a second point I'd like to mention also, even though you mentioned physical parameters, I miss also to have more strong emphasis on climate impact, for instance. Climate impact, climate parameters, climate actions with responsiveness, and so on and so forth. So, but also the institutional value of the investment or the adaptation intervention is, in my point of view, a component that could also extend the parameters of your matrix. So again, it's a very inspiring and encouraging work in progress, and we are looking forward to seeing the final product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think they're all the points you made are very good points. There is indeed debate going on within the group on capturing just what you described, which is the social, the human aspects of climate resilience and how those can be quantified and expressed. I think what makes that challenging is what units do you use? So for example, we have within our group been talking about using people-based metrics. We talked about, for example, I mentioned this earlier, so number of people made more climate resilient, but how do you define that? How do you determine whether somebody has been made more climate resilient or not? So it's, maybe there is an answer, I hope there is an answer, but it just illustrates that there is a need for really careful thought in terms of how we define metrics. We have, for example, thought about things like dailies. Anyone heard of a daily? Disability adjusted life year. Yeah. This is a unit used by statisticians in many countries around the world to somehow quantify the impact of public policy decisions or other kinds of public interventions on the quality of people's lives. Now, it always seems quite kind of cruel, kind of translating human and social conditions into numbers, but somehow we have to do it if we want to be able to quantify, if we want to be able to express in a quantitative sense the impact of our investments. The last point I want to make, which is a slight defense of using a monetary-based approach, is that one of the considerations we've had is that we really would like to see a system that enables and mobilizes and incentivizes more private sector engagement in financing climate resilience. We'd really like to see a system that private investors will be able to use, and that kind of lends itself to something which is expressed more in economic or monetary terms. What we find is that development finance institutions, especially those who have an express mandate, a specific mandate for targeting the most vulnerable countries and populations, they tend to be much more interested in a people-based approach. So I think the answer to this conundrum is that it seems that most likely that we'll end up with a sort of multi-choice kind of approach where there are different options for different institutions that are asking and answering slightly different types of questions.
Just one thing, if I might go ahead. I forgot to ask that. I'd like to also understand the underlying parameters behind the resilient benefit that you often mention. And yeah, thank you.
We're going to have a debate after this plenary on how to quantify the value of human lives. And Craig and the gentleman in the back will lead that discussion.
I'm sorry to come in.
Yes.
Could I just add something?
Of course.
Yes, on metrics for quantification. Sorry. Don't throw it. I might get hit. Sorry. Thank you very much. I just wanted to what Alpha's been saying, that there have been initiatives all going on within the UN system. I think the UNEP has its own financing initiative in which they are trying to see metrics that would look at the how to measure valuation of benefits, for instance, environmental, social benefits. Let's see, you look at the health sector, for instance. We also had the habitat, the housing sectors. We had look at those metrics. So they exist, they're starting, and I'm sure there are a number of specialists, of experts that would be able to help, for instance, the Standing Committee of Finance to do this. For instance, if you undertake some adaptation measure on sea level rise, on water, and water is a very big vector for diseases. And then you can measure, in my country also, the number of people who are going to be less sick, if you like, because we have undertaken adaptation measures to deal with sea level rise. Then you look at the costs that there will be for government of having all these sick people. Let's not even talk about human lives. Well, let me not get there, because you will not get out of Rabat. But this is measurable. Costs, health costs, housing costs. There can be metrics that can be used to evaluate, benefits, environmental and social benefits that will be derived from undertaking adaptation measures. They exist, they're there. We just have to, sort of put them together and see, perhaps through the Standing Committee of Finance. And I think very much, I learned so much from the presentations about this. Now, and transforming the financial system would be a mindset that will also have to transform. The last point I'd like to say is, friends, it's no longer a debate for 10 or 20 years. It is now. The situation is getting very urgent. We need that now. The number of people just dying in Asia daily, and I'm not even talking about Latin America. We really need to do something about it now. There is something that we're doing done. What we need is open, transparent exchange of information, a mindset that will enable us to get there. And I'm sure we will. Because money is there. You're going to lose money. If the governments will lose money if they're going to, deal with dengue in my country 4 times a year. We used to have a dengue season. Now the dengue season is the whole year round, because of the sea level rise, the amount of flooding, etc. So there are ways of doing it, and I'm sure that even just the experts in front of me right now will be able to undertake that kind of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the final intervention. I think we owe it to our panel to raise our hands and thank them for their time and expertise. We heard a series of suggestions around governance, strategic planning, transparency. We heard about the importance of taking a long-term view on the future of the insurance sector, for example, the need for increased capability and technical assistance. We heard about the importance of new standards for sustainable and resilient infrastructure, and we also heard a brief but important suggestion about the importance of simplifying access to climate finance given the urgency of the situation. So with that, let me conclude this plenary, and thank you for your time as an audience. You've been very patient and engaged. Thank you very much. A round of applause for you, and then we move to the next session.